I've been modding Super Mario Galaxy since May of 2020. I've made a handful of levels in the past and some are definitely better than others, but today I'd like to try something different. I thought it would be interesting to see if I could make a level in 1 week. Making levels isn't the most difficult thing in the world, it really does depend on what you're trying to do though. For a level to be good, I don't think creativity is really the biggest factor here, but more so execution. Personally, I'd rather play a level that doesn't have the most creative idea but is done really well than a level that has a cool idea but is done awfully. So I simply just follow the steps I usually do. I think of the theme first, I then plan out a couple of things. I start creating the level and testing it. I start polishing it up a bit and adding some text. And near the end I try to add cameras and music. Now keep this in mind, making levels isn't too easy. The tools at our disposal aren't as good as the Mario 64 ones, let's just say, but they do the job. I use 3 tools when making levels. Whitehole for making the actual level design, Launchscan Plus for making good cameras, and Dolphin for testing the level. I also use other things if I needed to change the scenario or the type of star, but apart from that I really only use these 3. Also don't get me started on trying to loop music well, I am not that good at it. So without further ado, here's how I made a level. So the first couple of steps was planning and actually thinking of the theme. I didn't want this to be too complex since I only had a week to do it, so I had to think of something quick. I wanted this level to have some sort of open world feeling to it, and I also wanted to keep it quite simple. So if I blend all these factors in together, we have a cloud level. Also I forgot to mention this step, but it's actually really easy to do. To actually get the files for Super Mario Galaxy 2, you need to go into Dolphin and extract the entire disk. Once you've done that, now you can start editing the level. I decided to replace Flip Swap simply because it's a really well known level that you should get rid of if you want to make a custom level. This is probably because there's not too many objects in the level and there's only one zone. If you don't know what a zone is, basically in levels such as Sky Station, each of the different planets have zones just to save on memory. Going back to the level, I decided to pick a skybox before I actually did anything else. I decided that the skybox with the clouds fit perfectly. And the next thing I do is actually trying to pick the first planet. Now if you're stuck trying to find a planet, here's the thing I suggest. Try opening other levels and pick out planets that you like. Then just find the object and place it in your level. I picked this planet from Yoshi's Star because it looked nice. Afterwards I went to a few more levels just to get a bit of inspiration. I decided on this cloudy core planet simply because it's circular and I kinda wanted it to be open world so it fits. Next up was creating a launch star so I could connect the planets together. Also I didn't mention this earlier, but if you're making a level and you're deleting objects, do not delete the paths. When I was making Open Plains Galaxy, I deleted one of the paths and the level just went into complete shambles afterwards. It still worked, but the flying just, it just didn't function. So just don't delete your paths. As you can see here, I'm making the first platforming section. I experimented with these grass platforms, but later on I got rid of them simply because everyone uses them. Here's a piece of advice. It's okay to take inspiration from other people's levels, but just don't try to directly copy it. Like there are far too many levels that uses these f***ing grass platforms. Anyways, I started adding cloud platforms just to fit the theme. At the end of this section is the starting planet for Cloudy Court. I know it's a bit strange to have this here, but I think it's a cool little mix up. I placed this drum here temporarily, but afterwards I think it looked awful, so I just got rid of it. And now it's for the first test. Here's a piece of advice. If you're doing anything majorly different in the level when you're editing it, make sure you test it. Because if the game crashes, then you know it was because of that new section you added. Also make sure to back up your level. I literally lost level that I put so much time into because I just didn't back it up. I couldn't even open it in Whitehole. It was just completely broken. So as you can see here with the first test, everything's looking pretty fine for now. So now for the second section. Also, the way I'm going to do this section is, I'm going to have the player collect 5 star chips to enable a launch star so you can go to the next section. And yes, I know I literally just complained about these grass platforms, but I think I have a good idea what I'm going to do here. Now here's the next section that I added. This area is set up in a way so you basically just jump on the drums and they send you to different platforms. And obviously we are thinking the same thing because this just doesn't look that nice. Anyways, more about that later. And now it's time for another launch star. It brings you over here to this planet. Over here I added a windmill and a couple of stone platforms. Basically you just use the wind here just to get from one side to the other. And as you can see here, I'm just adding the 5th section. Essentially this is really simple. Remember I puzzle planked that one planet with the 4 switches? This is basically the same thing. You hit one of the switches and it releases a star chip. I went back to the first section just to add a cloud flower. And at this point the level's looking pretty good considering that this is only the first day. I went back over to this section and added a few more green platforms. And as you can see, this is the gimmick of it. You essentially just have to hit the crystals to make the other platforms appear. Now here's something that was just a complete disaster. I tried to make this section seem a bit cooler by having different gravity on this one planet. But sadly, I simply just can't work with gravity in this game. Whenever I try it, it just completely messes up. But as you can see here, I did another test and everything here looks pretty good. Everything until this part. Like, explain to me what's going on here. So with the gravity completely failing me, I just scrapped the idea. Also, speaking about scrapping ideas, I got rid of this entire drum section because this just looked awful. I replaced the section with these space chunk blocks, which might seem a bit lazy, but you'll see what I'll do. And as you can see, this is quite similar to the grass platform section. It's just a slight bit more simplified. And as you can see here, I'm trying to understand what the gravity is, but it simply just didn't work in the end. And as you can see here, I'm adding the third main planet. This section will have you moving in different directions using the Cloudflower. These fans will also give off wind. And here I'm adding the starships. Here I'm adding these enemies from Grandmaster Galaxy, I forgot the name of them. I also added a few areas such as the restrict power up section. The way this area works is, if you get a power up inside of it and leave, it'll get rid of that power up. I also added these hammer bros. I finished up here at this section and put some beat blocks under the switches. I put these here simply because if you destroy the cloud, then the switches won't be floating. And as you can see here, I replaced the pipe with this launch star. Now what I did here was added the camera to this area. And yes, I know I said earlier on that I added cameras near the end, but I think I have a good reason here. Basically, since I had a week to do this, I had to use all the time I had. So at this stage of the day, I didn't really know what to add to the level, so I basically just added the camera. I also did this for some other zones. And as you can see here, the cameras weren't really working, so I had to kind of fix that. At the end of the first day, I was just kind of editing cameras. So honestly, just from one day, I think this was pretty good. Yes, I know that's not that polished, but considering I had less than a day to do this, I think it's pretty good progress. So at the start of day 2, I decided to do these things with these treasure chests. Essentially what you do here is you grab a shell and you throw it at one of these 3 chests, and one of them has the launch star. I also decided to put these flowers in just because it looked quite nice. Now if you look here, I'm trying to put in some decoration for the fly-in, but after a while I just got rid of these since they weren't that nice looking. Now here I'm just making a small little platform challenge that'll lead to a 1-up. So basically what I'm doing here is, I want to make these stone platforms look like they're not floating randomly, so I decided to put these poles here with the fans. But I had to get rid of them because in game, yeah, they just don't really look that good. And as you can see here, I'm making the final section of the level. And afterwards I just tested it. Also as you can see, I've replaced the poles with these pipes. And you can also see that all these cameras are looking pretty good. All of them except for this. This camera is just a slight bit rough. And that's all I pretty much got done on day 2. I pretty much polished up the level a bit more and added a few cameras. On the start of day 3, I started working on this last section, and here's probably one of my biggest problems I have with the level, making this 2D restricted area. I was having troubles with this for a bit of time until I just realised the rotation was incorrect. So I just basically had to change the rotation and it was fixed. And as you can see, this spot's working pretty much fine. And unfortunately, this is all I really got done on day 3. I did a couple of things off camera, but apart from that, not really much was done. On the start of day 4, I started the purple coin mission. Also, I just thought it was fitting to have the storm team in the background. I actually incorporated a lot of these purple coins with these switches here. After I did a bit more of the level, but wasn't on camera. And now it's time for the hardest part of making the level, choosing the name. Yeah, it took me a while to actually think of a name for this level. This is where Thesaurus comes in. I sat here for about like 10 minutes thinking of a good name. But eventually I came up with the name Breezy Sky Galaxy. I know it's a slight bit odd, but I think it's alright. And if you look here, the purple coin mission is working fine. And that was everything for day 4. Day 5 just mostly consisted of me making cameras. I pretty much fixed most of them that were a bit bad looking, so I think the end result was quite good. And yep, that's all I did for this day. You aren't actually gonna believe what I did on day 6. Guess what, right? I made more cameras. So on the final day, I added some music and I polished up most of the level. The only part that seems a small bit rough still is the second section. Like, the camera can be sorta wonky here, but I think it's still bearable. And without further ado, this is how the level came out.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you'll see the purple coin mission when the level will be eventually released. Now, if any of you came here just to get a bit of modding advice, well, what the f are you doing? If this project interested you at all, I recommend getting into Galaxy modding. And as I said previously, if you try to learn the Galaxy mod from this one video, I am not the best person to learn off. So if you're modding the game and you need some help, there's plenty of Discord servers to help you. The only person I recommend to stay away from is this person. Yeah, stay away from them.
Alright, so down up left. Down up left.